right. Good evening, Sheetal. How are you doing?
Good evening, Rajiv. I'm doing great today. Uh, Thank you for having me on this very special initiative that you are running. And in fact, while I spoke to you, I know that your firm is the only book based leadership consulting house that we have in
Yes.
India. So
Yes.
fantastic. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Privilege.
It's a pleasure to have you. Before we get started and talk on a powerful book, let me have the honor of introducing you to the audience. To good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whichever part of the world you're going to be listening to the guest of the day. All of you heard 33 global leaders come and talk about 22 powerful books in season one of Leaders and Libraries, which pushed us to start season two. And in season two, we have 40 illustrious leaders coming and talking on 40 powerful books. That's massive for me. And today, we have yet another guest for the day, Ms. Sheetal Shah, Chief People Officer, India and South Asia for Schindler India. She's been with an organization for close to a decade. That's quite a long time with the organization on multiple roles that she has handled. In the world where 3 years seems to be longevity and loyalty, this is quite an interesting time period that she has spent with the organization. She has done every gamut of work under the umbrella of HR function. You constantly see her on LinkedIn on multiple platforms and forums where she speaks on her subjects of interest. She is somebody who's been awarded as one of the top 100 HR under 40 in India, and she has successfully led Schindler India to GPTW recognition in 2020. Woo, that's good work. And beyond all that, she is a book lover, and it's such a pleasure to have you, Sheetal. Thank you for coming on board. Welcome on board.
Thank you, Rajiv. Thank you. Humbled.
Pleasure. All right, so I'm going to start with the first question. Earlier interaction I had with you, I saw that you were a woman of few words. You spoke less, you spoke very calm, as against the man that I am, that I speak a lot. So let's see how this conversation goes through for the next 45 minutes, and I'm all excited to have that. Uh, Tell me, Sheetal, how
Yes,
did
I am the
with books start, and how early did it start?
Okay. Well, my earliest memory, if I have to be honest, is, like how all children start, I think. I remember that book of, the three little pigs and the little Red Riding Hood and Goldilocks. And those were my favorite books, always next to my table, or rather my bed. And but to be really honest, my interest
Hmm.
in reading started when I was doing my master's in
Hmm.
human resource management from Leeds University.
Hmm.
So it was my, um, I think that experience actually changed me.
Beautiful.
So walking through, the campus building, um, there's this like little short flight of steps, that leads up to this to the library. And when I entered, I remember it was like this huge, cylindrical space,
Hmm.
and it had these. It does still have. It's called the Brotherton Library in Leeds. It's basically called the Leeds University
Yeah.
Library now. It has these 20, columns of green marble, and the
Hmm.
best part was that whether it is books or journals or white papers, they had any research collection that you wanted,
Lovely.
and it was not like our libraries where you would just go ask the person where I can find the book. Over here there were a site where you're supposed to log in which book you want to find. It will tell you the path to actually reach that particular floor and that particular corner and that particular shelf.
Wow. Wow.
So just having that wealth of knowledge, in like all packed in one place, whether it's online or it's, in hard books, it was just so exciting. I think
And
that's when I realized that there's so much more to studying. It was more than studying, and I think that same thing continues even at work.
oh, lovely.
That it's not about work, but it's more than that.
How lovely. I'm sure that must have been an overwhelming experience as you walked into the corridor of that huge library
Absolutely.
that you're talking. I'm already visualizing it. So it's interesting.
Yeah,
Lovely, lovely.
yeah,
Such triggers in life make a complete change in one, isn't it? And just makes a complete transformation. As somebody who's reading books probably just for hobby, suddenly became a book lover and a maverick book reader after that step into that library.
yeah,
Oh, beautiful. Yeah.
yeah.
Love. So from there on, when you started reading and you read a lot of management books, self-help books, leadership books through your journey, you would have applied many of them at your workplace. Tell me, Sheetal, how did these book play a significant role in your expansion as a leader?
Okay. So, Rajiv, to start with, I was actually quite confused in terms of what career option I should take.
Mm-hmm,
So even when I chose to do BCom for
mm-hmm,
graduation, it
mm-hmm.
was more like science में बहुत पढ़ाई करनी पड़ेगी, but I'm still a bright student, so I should go to college. So I shouldn't do arts, so I'll take commerce. No, but then, but then when it came to doing my masters, I said this time I want to give it a proper thought, right? Because I want to do something that I'm going to enjoy doing. And that's when I was given the book Human Resource Champions by
Mhm.
one of my cousin's colleague. And this cousin was the only one from my business family who was working in a corporate,
Oh, okay.
right? So he gave me this book. So I think my connection with book starts from there. That one book helped me make a career choice, and
Lovely.
that's what kept me in HR for the last 8 years now. So I did my masters, came back, and I've followed that. During work, in fact, I also remember in my first job.
Mm,
Um, the company was going through a transition. So I worked with Avaya Global Connect. At that time, it was Tata Telecom,
mm,
and then it was a joint venture, but then Avaya was taking over. Right. So my CEO actually personally handed over books to everyone, and it
mm.
was called Who Moved My Cheese. I think every child
Ah,
also would have read that book now.
true,
But
true.
but at that stage in my career, to read a book like that, and to get that learning that the only thing in life that's constant is change,
Yeah,
is so powerful.
true.
It's such a small thing, but if you are able to learn something like that at the start of your career, imagine how adaptable you become.
That too from
And
a
now when
mouse.
I see, I mean, when I yes, exactly. you know so I mean, when I look back 15 years, people didn't speak about the word agility, right?
Mm,
And now we're only speaking about agility and resilience. So what is that? I mean, if I connect back to that book, it's just about change.
yeah.
So I would say from start of the career that way. Then honestly, I also have I think I already shared with you earlier that I also have had books like what was it called, the it's called Persuasion. There's basically a book on persuasion. The name will come to my mind right now.
Mm.
It's on influencing and persuasion. So I actually picked up that book
Six Psychological Weapons
to
of
be able
Persuasion
to.
by Robert Cialdini.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, I'm Robert Cialdini. Wow, you're super good. I think it was the psychology of persuasion.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was psychology of
Six
persuasion,
Psychological Weapons of
and it
Persuasion.
exactly what you. Yes, exactly. So it has these six universal principles, right? So I remember using those for my sales team. I was doing exactly what you were doing actually. I took that book and I converted into a training module.
Wow,
And that was my first time when I was actually creating training content all by myself.
lovely.
So I think whether it's making a career choice or it's helping you get through changes within your organization, or helping you actually deliver your work, to now, in fact, the last book, the current book that I am reading is again Dave Ulrich,
Ah,
about reinventing the organization, and it's just perfect. And I can't imagine how he has written this book before COVID happened.
I know, I know.
It's phenomenal. So I'm actually reading, making notes, because he's spoken about so many different models, and it's so exciting because
Lovely,
this
lovely.
is something, in my position as an HR person, is just going to, even if I'm able to apply one or two of those models
Absolutely.
at Schindler, where I'm working right
It's the
now,
Bible here.
I'm sorted. Exactly. So I
Seriously.
don't know how to really answer your question, but I would say this is how books have helped me in different phases
Super.
of my career
Super,
life.
super. Actually, I've answered it so beautifully, but you're still telling me I don't know how to answer. So look at the movement from Spencer Johnson's of Whom Would Make Cheese to HR Champions of Dave Ulrich to again Dave Ulrich. You have gone through all that and implemented it at work. So that's precisely what books can do to leaders, which
Yeah,
is what I keep telling people. Read, guys, read. You don't know the kind of a transformation you can have when you read books from the greats like
true.
Dave Ulrich. I mean, if Dave Ulrich comes, मैं तो चरण स्पर्श कर लूंगा जाके. I said, God, let me do a pranam to you first. Many years back, I had
Absolutely,
this
me too.
golden opportunity to meet Marshall Goldsmith when he was in Bangalore. I was part of the NHRD Bangalore chapter.
Wow.
I ran
Hmm.
home, picked up that book, What Got You Here Won't Get You. Then I said, I can't miss this opportunity of taking a signature from this great man. I was lucky to have 5 minutes with him, was sipping tea and having a signature of this man. What else can you ask for, Sheetal?
Wow.
So,
Wow.
so
Awesome. Lucky you.
lovely. Thank you so much for that. So tell me, from all the books that you have read, which are equally powerful, what made you pick this beautiful book of Timothy Galway on the inner game of work? And his work on inner game is fabulous, whether it is on golf or tennis or work, all are marvelous. Why this book?
Absolutely. Why this book? I actually picked this because this is one recent book which really had a big impact on me as a person. Okay, so this book was given to me. So basically, last year I started pursuing ICF. So I wanted to become a certified coach,
Hmm.
right? And that's when this, as a part of the curriculum, I was given this book to read, right? And then there was this, basic question. So each person in the class was given a different book, right? And we were first asked that if you had to prefer to learn how to coach or learn how to learn, which
Hmm.
one would it be?
Hmm.
And most of us said we want to learn how to coach.
Hmm.
I mean, we are here for coaching. But my aha moment actually came in when I read the book, and it's such a simple concept, that if you learned how to learn, then you can apply that knowledge of learning to anything, even
True.
coaching,
True.
right? But the reverse is not true. So,
Absolutely.
so in order for me, right? I mean, so in order for me to become an effective coach, right? I have to understand the nature of learning. And
True.
that's not true only to become a coach. That's also true because I'm an HR professional and I am
Absolutely.
responsible for learning development and talent management.
Hmm.
So if I am able to understand the learning process,
Hmm.
personally get familiar with the kinds of, you know, um, vulnerabilities and obstacles that a learner experiences,
Correct.
then I would make a much better coach, because then I'll be able to support, whether it's my team member or anyone else at work, I'll be able to support
Hmm.
them so much better. You know,
Absolutely.
and this book actually, makes you re-examine that fundamental motivation. Ki why are you going to work?
Hmm.
Is it just to perform, or is it because you want to learn and keep growing,
Correct.
right? And that's so powerful. I mean, it just made me think in a completely different way. Because
Absolutely.
honestly, Rajiv, you said, right, that I'm a person of few words. I'm not someone who speaks too much. I'm generally a quiet person. I like to do my work. I like to get noticed for my work. But if I leave all that aside, and all that stress that comes, that I have to perform well, I have to do well in my position, I have to be an effective HR leader. So all these noises and
Hmm.
voices that you have in your brain,
Hmm.
I've lived with them. And this
Right.
book just split that. It just clarified that thing.
Just settled everything.
It just settled it. When you're able to differentiate that voice and your authentic self, um, I don't know, it just stuck with me, Rajiv.
Lovely, lovely. So good. You know what I'm
So
enjoying here?
it just gave me much more clarity. Yeah,
Absolutely. When I send you this recording later in a video format, you're going to see it yourself, Sheetal. I am seeing a different Sheetal today as the first guest meet chat we had. When you were talking about this book and impact, your eyes were popping out, your eyebrows were moving up, your cheeks were bloating. You were all excited on the impact the book had on you, which pretty
absolutely.
much talks about how this book has really helped you. It's so beautiful. I'm going to start moving into a couple of powerful concepts that Timothy talks about in this book, right? This
Sure.
powerful concept of the cycle of interference and the self one and self two, which is what you said, two things in the mind.
Yes.
How do you see this as a powerful model of self awareness?
Okay. Um, so as you said, right? I mean, as I was explaining, this book, um, what Timothy has done is he has explained or introduced two selves in this. There is self one and there is self two,
Right.
right? Self one is the voice in your head,
Mm,
basically, which is trying to actively manage how you're doing certain things,
mm,
right? It is responsible for your efforts to try hard, or more often, actually, to be critical about yourself,
correct.
right? Self two, in contrast, is the doer. It's your authentic self,
Mm,
right? It's a part of you that actually ends up doing the things, right? If I have to, okay, let me just put it in a very simple way.
mm,
Today, I'm sitting in front of you, right? And we are having this discussion, which is being recorded and which I don't know how many people will listen to going forward,
mm,
right? My self one, my critical self one in my mind is telling me, are you looking okay? Are you sounding okay? Are your expressions okay? Are you going to refer to your notes?
mm,
Are you be able to going to speak well? Right? These are the sounds that I'm getting from self one, right?
mm,
But when I leave that,
mm.
self two is when I actually get into the zone. Like you said, you could see my facial expressions changing, my eyes popping out, my eyebrows changing, right? Now that is coming when I'm allowing self two to not hear any noise from self one,
True.
right? And just just
Natural.
go with the flow and be natural, and just allow yourself to come out more fluidly,
Correct.
and that will allow me to present what I really want to say.
Yeah.
So I think it's very simple. So if you have to really improve yourself, the inner voice is obsessed.
Yeah.
Your self one is obsessed with what you should do, what you should
Mm,
not do.
mm,
Even after a performance, we'll be critical about ourselves. But if you allow self to your authentic self to really come out, um,
mm.
you will be able to learn and perform better.
Absolutely. And the self too can somewhere defeat the self one and do a lot more good to us. It's almost like that
Absolutely.
cartoon characters of
If you
काम
are
के इस
able
तरफ
to
एक devil
focus.
निकलता है एक angel निकलता है. So angel always takes over,
Yes,
tries to finish the devil there. Something of that sort.
yes, absolutely.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I think that's very, very interesting. And that interference that happens between these two that he talks about in the book is what I would want to ask you in the
Hmm.
next question, which is a very powerful equation. I think Sheetal, one of the simplest form of equations anybody could have defined. Performance is potential minus interference. And you and me have been battling and struggling and talking and defining these two words of performance potential under the HR umbrella कि हमको तो सब कुछ पता है. And this man brings one additional word called
I
minus
know.
interference and settles every damn doubt on the head. Tell me this about
Absolutely, and I feel foolish, because I actually, give sorry, but for people who are listening from my organization also, I give so much yarn. Do you understand the difference between performance and potential? I challenge my managers. Potential को ऐसे देखते हैं, performance ऐसे होगी, So, um, anyways, so really to get to the point, right? The whole inner game approach is about unlearning the personal
it.
and the cultural habits that can actually interfere with
Mm,
our ability to learn and perform, right?
mm,
So the goal actually is simple, if not easy, that you give yourself,
mm,
greater access to your inner ability.
mm,
So there are two. So that's why the formula they've given is that your performance
mm,
will be equal to
mm.
the potential minus interference. What is potential? Potential includes all of our capabilities,
Correct.
our actualized or latent,
True.
our ability to learn. That's
True.
your full potential, right?
Correct.
Now, interference is represents basically the ways on how we can undermine ourselves,
Mm.
right? Or how we don't, anything that comes in your way of not being able to fulfill
Right.
your own capacities,
Yeah. A limiting
right?
force.
So obviously, correct. And and that's why it's so simple. What you will perform will be uh, a result of your potential that you have minus all these interferences. So
True.
there are only two ways to work on this, right? I mean, one
Correct.
is that you either increase your capacity,
Yeah.
right, of your by actualizing your potential, or
True.
you decrease the interference, or of course you could do a combination of both,
Yeah.
right? In my experience, since you asked me, you know honestly, I've tried this.
Mm.
Now, potential is something that maybe I cannot increase because that's what it is,
Mm.
right? But if I'm able to reduce that interference piece that we are speaking about,
Mm.
I think it has an immediate and a far-reaching impact on just your levels of learning itself.
Absolutely.
So that's how I would kind of bring it back to work, to our employees, to managers, to leaders,
Mm.
that to 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 kind of look at performance in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
By It's like your enemy is yourself,
Mm. Mm. Mm.
right?
Mm. Mm.
So when you're getting stuck and when you're not being able to deliver, it's that self one that you have to make
Correct.
silent, and it's the self two that you really need to focus on.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's actually the same thing put in a very different way for corporates to understand.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think you know what this is a very easy equation also to apply, right? Because when you and me come to office and work,
Yeah,
we have so many internal stimuli that falls and does the job of an interference for us. There are external stimuli that preys on us, and everything that comes from outside or from inside is only falling into the bucket called interference, interference, interference. If I can club it like that. उस पे अगर काम कर लिया
correct.
तो there is a definite potential increase and performance will move up at least by a notch. It is so simple to actually do. It's just about being aware, identifying those interferences and working and shifting them out.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, so good. Yeah. So tell me, give us one example where you moved one interference and that really helped you for the young minds to understand this.
Can I? Okay, I'll be honest. I've done two things in the past couple of months.
Hmm.
One, I did a course on inner engineering, right?
Lovely.
Because that's something that just allows you to meditate, to be able to focus, right? So it helps you train your mind better, right? That's what inner engineering is about. That guru I'm speaking about. I've actually used that, and it does help,
Hmm.
because he runs you through guided meditation.
Yeah.
And as I was saying, I've always had this huge problem of self one and self two always conflicting.
Hmm.
I'm overtly critical about myself.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's also because of the
So
pursuit for
I
excellence
would
that you
never.
have.
Yes, probably, and probably also because I've been raised that way. My mom has raised me like that. Like, even if I stood in the first five ranks in my school, it wasn't enough.
Hmm.
Why wasn't it first was the question,
Hmm.
So I've looked at things like that. So it's not
Hmm.
about competing, but it's about always being the best at what I do,
Right.
you know. So that puts a lot of pressure on to me,
Hmm.
right? I build that on myself. My mom is not dictating what I do at work anymore, right? But and my boss is amazing. So I don't have those issues, but it's the way you are. And I think after reading this book, I realized that apart from the tools that they have mentioned, right,
Hmm. Hmm.
inner engineering kind of just complemented what I wanted to do,
Lovely.
to help you silence that self one.
Hmm.
At a more professional level, Rajiv, I just went through a training.
Hmm.
It's an excellent training. It's called Time Smart.
Hmm.
Okay, it's run by a firm in Australia, where actually I think my life has changed or is changing right now, because what they help you do is manage your time better,
Mm-hmm.
right? And this is with a technology. Technology is
Okay.
only my to-do list, okay, and my Microsoft Teams. That's it.
Oh,
Until
lovely.
now, I used to flag emails. I used to write notes next to my phone in the night when I remember something. Then I used to have to-do list in writing, and then you have minutes from the meeting from somewhere else,
True,
right? So
true.
to put all of that together used to get very difficult, right?
Mm.
So what I'm seeing interference over here, right? I'm still going back to what I was saying.
Yeah, yeah.
My interference is this, multiple channels of information and directions coming your way,
Okay.
right? Which I had to structure in
Correct.
some way to
Got
be able to actually prioritize and do my job, right? So I
it.
know I can do all of them. So I have the potential, but
Mm.
in order to reduce that interference, I'm actually using Microsoft Teams in a much more structured way, where I actually have my entire task list. Not only my calendar invites, I'm saying my entire to-do list is on my calendar. So when I wake
Wow.
up in the morning, I know what my meetings are for the day, and also what are my tasks for the day on that list itself,
Lovely, lovely, lovely.
right? With time boxing done. I mean, what can be better than that? Honestly, I think Rajiv, we give yarn, sorry to a lot of people, ki time management karo, prioritize karo, but ठीक है, prioritize तो कर रहे हैं, but there are times when you just have so much on your table,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
to be able to structure that itself, how to prioritize becomes difficult,
True,
right?
true.
So I would call that, in my small way, interference, and trying to remove that by using proper tools,
Beautiful.
and then being able to deliver on what I'm supposed to every day.
Exactly. Time smart, is it? I've made a note of it. Let me go and explore this because as an entrepreneur and a founder of the organization, I've got so many things on my head that I'm doing. And I'm a big fan of Brian Tracy and his concepts of managing time, starting from Eat the Frog and etc. Let me look at this. And if it's as you're talking about it, let me explore attending a session. That'll
Yeah.
be interesting for me.
So Rajiv, actually, the entire management team at Schindler went through it, and we went through it because my Asia Pacific HR head told me it changed his life, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, how can something change your life? Because he's so good, anyways, but this he said changed his life. So I would highly recommend it to you. I'll share the
I'm
details
going to
later.
please do that. I'm going to explore. If you have any contact person whom you think I can connect with, I will definitely love to take their help from you.
Yes, yes, sure,
Super,
sure.
super, super. That takes us to the next very pertinent question, which is what you're talking about. And he beautifully gives a very nice statement which says, focus is what distracts us from whatever is distracting us. I thought, what a formation of a sentence by this man. I read it 2 3 times and I said, ये subject object of English बराबर बैठ रहा है क्या? Then I said, हाँ बराबर बैठ रहा है. Then I went back and forth. Is it right? Yeah, focus can also distract you from the distraction. I said, wow, I never thought from this angle. Tell me, how do you see this and use it in your workplace?
Okay. So, honestly, Rajiv, to be able to explain this complicated sentence, I will use the example from the book itself, right?
Please.
In the book, the author uses the tennis ball as an example, right?
Yeah.
So, say for example, I'm learning tennis, and I know that my backhand is weak,
Mm,
right? Um, so the tennis ball is coming, and I know my backhand is weak.
right.
As the ball approaches, I'm thinking to myself that, oh my God, now I'm going to make my mistake. That's my self one talking to me, right? So
Mm,
I'm going to tighten up my muscles. I'm going to get so stressed कि पता नहीं मेरा ये backhand कैसे चलेगा इस time, right? And so I become so defensive. I'm trying to avoid this threat in my mind. I am getting nervous, right? All that is happening, and then it happens,
yes.
right? I prove myself that I am weak at my backhand,
Mm,
right? So it's because I am focusing so much. I'm going back to the focus thing that we spoke,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That I'm focusing so much on the ball, right? That I am not focusing on the other aspects of the way the ball is coming to me,
Correct.
right? I can just use the same example of cricket, right? Like if
Mm,
I don't know at what speed the ball is coming to me,
mm,
and at what height it's coming to me, if I'm
mm,
just going to be focused कि ये तो backhand रहेगा, it's
correct.
going to distract me from playing the ball the way I should,
Bilkul.
right? So it's actually as simple as that. That if as a coach, like if you work at eliminating the
Mm.
players, that self negative talk that goes on in your mind,
Correct.
instead of focusing on those things that I'm weak at backhand,
Mm.
if I just focus positively on the ball's trajectory,
Right.
right, it will probably lead to more positive reaction to it.
Correct. Correct.
So um, I hope I'm being able to explain,
You
because
are. You are.
honestly,
You are.
even
Yes, you are.
I, right, because I honestly had to read these chapters a couple of times when I was reading it to understand what he's really trying to say. Right. So to simply put it, if I have to translate this into work, we
Mm.
shouldn't be playing to win, but we should be playing to
Mm.
learn. Right. I mean,
Right.
that's my key takeaway from all of this.
Mm.
If if I'm able to focus on how I can do my best rather than having these interferences, it will, you'll just end up doing better.
Yeah, correct, 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 correct. It makes so much of sense, isn't it? Because when you said focus on the trajectory of the ball, I'm just thinking that the moment my mind is focused on the trajectory of the ball, my self one or whatever you talk about is not allowed to go and focus on all other kind of distractions that are around in terms of am I good in backhand? Will my hand go the right way? Is the ball at the right distance? All some hoga hi nahi. Because it's
Correct.
just on one thing, which is the trajectory of the ball. Yeah, actually.
Yeah, and I'll use the same example right now, Rajiv. If
Mm,
you are asking me a question right now, and if
mm,
I'm worried about what question is Rajiv going to ask me next,
mm,
you know, I'm not going to be able to listen to what you are saying. Instead, if I
mm.
just listen carefully to you, I'll be
Yeah,
able to answer your question.
absolutely, absolutely.
Focus, you know, not on what you're going to say next, but if I focus on what you are saying,
Now,
I'll be able to respond.
beautiful. That's a very nice example. That's a
It's
very, very nice
it's
example.
so beautiful.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's so
yeah, it is.
beautiful.
I think the young leaders who are in the hurry to perform, in the urgency to prove themselves and grow quickly in the leadership journey of theirs, where I see definitely less patience, and I don't want any young guys here getting offended by what I'm saying. I'm talking based on experience, having worked with many guys across organizations. There is definitely an urgency. If they can read this book and if they read the book, I am so sure that all those unnecessary urgencies in their head will just settle down and allow
Hmm.
them to take those pauses and move and create the punch for the organization as again just rushing through, isn't it? Lovely. Yeah. I'm just loving this conversation. This takes me to the next one, which you spoke about. No, it's not about winning, it's about joy. And that equation is so beautiful. And he talks about learning, enjoyment, performance. And you also said that you
Yes,
work not to perform but to learn, if that is the mindset. And then you also spoke about joy. So
yes.
you preempted the answer to this question. So tell us, how do you focus on this equation of learning, enjoyment, performance? How does Sheetal Shah do that?
Okay. So, Rajiv, this work triangle,
Mm,
where the author has written about performance, experience, and learning, as you said, they've shown it as a triangle, which means that they are interdependent,
correct.
right? So, um, what the book really says is that as an individual, if I'm
Mm,
not learning,
mm,
over a period of time, my performance is going to decline,
correct.
right? And my pre if my predominant experience of
Mm,
work
mm,
is boredom or stress, or
mm,
because I'm not performing,
mm,
then what I experience
mm.
will suffer,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And obviously, then my learning and performance will also suffer, right?
correct.
So, um, um, so basically, how do I put this? It says that, how do I apply this? Okay, so let me put it the other way, right?
Mm, mm,
That I have met employees who say, ma'am, I want to learn how to focus more on the customer.
mm,
I want to learn how to reach higher sales targets or quotas.
mm, mm.
I'm learning how to get a promotion, right? Now, right? So if we are going to focus on these things, are you really learning? Will it actually impact your performance? I don't think so, right?
Yeah.
So let me tell you a very simple example that we've put into place at Schindler, right? At Schindler, we have four. So we basically all our performances are measured, right? Everyone has KPIs.
Right.
Now, within your KPI, some part of your KPI, your bonus amount will be paid based on how the company performs, but then your other part is on how you perform.
Mm.
Now, in these four objectives, this is something that I've seen in Unilever also 10 years back.
Right.
Yeah, um, that you distinguish your learning goal from your performance goals,
Mm.
right? So out of your, you can have only four goals first of all every year,
Mm. Mm.
right? Because you should focus on the big things.
Correct.
Out of these four goals, we have made one as a
Mm.
learning goal, or
Okay.
a person focused or a behavior focused goal,
Mm. Mm.
right? So every individual in the company today is supposed to focus on output, meaning performance, but even one has to compulsorily and mandatorily be linked to your learning,
Oh, so it's actually 3 plus 1.
right? And this, yes,
Mm.
right? And this, I think, I know maybe this is not new, right? I mean, I know a lot of organizations do it, but to be able to actually practice it,
Mm.
that, because I don't get paid for learning, right? I get paid for what I
Achieving
perform.
those three KPIs.
I don't get paid for, yes, but if you link this beautiful triangle, right? If you say that your learning has to be a continuous thing, then it will have a direct impact on your performance, and
Yeah.
therefore what you experience and the enjoyment that you actually feel
True.
by going to work.
True. 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 True.
Right, so actually the book, also speaks about that acronym quest, where
Mm.
they actually define in detail how, you can form your goals. I'm not really going into that,
Yeah.
but this is a very simple thing that, what we've said already, don't play to win, play to learn, because
Yeah.
then you'll be better at your game and you will automatically win. It's going to be a byproduct.
Absolutely, absolutely. This is so interesting, right? Because we have been tuned that focus on results, focus on results, focus on results. Whereas we are saying don't focus on results, focus on learning, focus on learning, focus on learning, and result would be a byproduct of learning. That's a paradigm shift in the head, isn't it?
Absolutely. In fact,
Yeah.
Rajiv, we have leadership behaviors that are defined for every single leader, right? There are eight
Hmm.
leadership behaviors that are defined.
Hmm.
One of them is continuous improvement.
Right, right, right.
It's a
Hmm.
behavior that we want our leaders to exhibit.
Right, right.
So, eh, and how is that? I mean, if we've defined it that way, that this is what I want you to be doing. In
Hmm.
fact, if you see the whole culture at Schindler in the last 2 years, we've changed it to try and make it a learning organization. And it's not about only technical training coming from an engineering company.
Hmm. Hmm.
Our pride used to be, or is rather, technical training. We have the world's best training centers, in the elevator industry.
Hmm.
But making a shift from there, our technical training team itself speaking about this, to even a fitter,
Hmm.
or to a technician, that,
Hmm.
focus on what you're getting to learn. How can you do your job better and better and better each time, is
So,
what you should focus on. So I think that's a complete,
no,
uh,
it is. It
as you
is.
said, paradigm
It
shift.
is, it is. I mean, if you can take the concept of performance as potential minus interference, or you take the concept of self one versus self two of these book to a fitter, it is a beautiful job.
Yep.
Yeah, true, true, true. Because he would have his own interferences at that level in which he's operating. Would be very different to yours and mine, but he still
Yes.
has. And we can so much help that guy to arrest those interferences, right? Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
True, true. That's a nice thought. That's a very nice thought. I didn't think from that angle, but that your fitter example was just apt for me, just triggering thoughts in my head. Makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah, I have a person who does a bit of a clerical work for me. I'm going to take this to her and kind of help her with some thought process. Thank you for that, Sheetal. I didn't think that angle. Yeah, it tremendously makes
Okay.
sense. That takes me to the next last but one question. He calls stop as the tool of tools. I'm not going to ask you anything. Explain this to us. Why is it so powerful?
Extremely powerful, and honestly difficult to explain in few minutes also, but I will try my best. I think what he is really speaking about, the stop tool, is actually about gaining mobility,
Hmm.
right? Not stopping, but mobility,
Yeah.
right? So if we have to be mobile, when I'm saying mobile, if we have to keep moving on in our work,
Hmm.
right, as attractive and as beneficial it sounds, it's not easy, right?
Hmm.
Because though mobility is like a potential for all human beings,
Correct.
I believe that having um, just being aligned with the very nature of that self too that he speaks about, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Most of us work in environments which are both in and out, right? Inner self and
Yeah.
outside, that make it difficult to achieve, to keep going,
Correct.
right? So moving. So what the book really tells you is that you have to be able to find that way of working
Hmm.
in which you can be more fully conscious,
Hmm.
right? More aware of of where you are,
Hmm.
where you are going,
Hmm.
and why.
Yeah.
This is the essence of mobility.
True.
What sets you apart from conformity, right?
Hmm.
So it is what self 2 is all about. That it
Correct.
is why actually, redefining work. So that's what I was saying, that if you are able to change your focus to and if all of this is geared to arriving at a place where we
Hmm.
can work more consciously,
Hmm.
yeah, it will. So what is the stop tool, right? It is like the stop start stop tool, right?
Correct.
What he really speaks about is that, like what you were describing, right? When we go to work, there's so many distractions,
Hmm.
like in a single day, so many interruptions come your way,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Now if when that interruption comes, the
Hmm.
stop tool tells you that if I am able to stop myself,
Yeah.
you know um, and check if I really address that interference,
Correct.
you know, decide what I have to do over there, and then go back, start, yeah, so that it gives you that momentum in your
Momentum.
performance and
Beautiful.
you don't lose that momentum, right?
Yeah.
So basically, the this stop shouldn't be taking away the consequences of the interruption, right?
Uh,
It's um this is a tough one to explain, to be honest. But if I have to put it
True.
very
True. I know. I know. I
simply, right,
understand.
that the trick is, you have to realize that you don't carry your unfinished tasks in your mind.
Correct.
Okay, whatever these interferences are, you should lay them down so that they don't remain as an interference,
Hmm.
right? Knowing that they will be there, and when you choose when you want to pick them up,
Okay. Okay.
right? So you kind of um so when there is an interference, or when there is self one interfering with you, you stop,
Hmm.
you acknowledge, right?
Hmm.
And you see what's happening there, and
Hmm.
then you try not to look by either putting it for doing it later, or
Yeah.
you finish it, because then it's going to allow you to move forward. It's
Yeah.
actually quite simple,
It is.
but I'm not so sure if it
You
makes
have you
sense.
have to practice it. You have to practice it, isn't it? I think you kind
Absolute,
of.
it's very difficult.
It is. It is. It is.
And this
You
is
know
all
what?
about mindfulness, no, Rajiv. I
Absolutely.
mean,
Absolutely.
it's just a different word for mindfulness. The whole concept of multitasking is a myth.
Yeah.
That when you're doing one thing, just focus on that. And what does that mean? In this book, it's just put in a different way. It is saying that, maintain your mobility, which means don't get distracted. And if something is distracting you, put give it a place, so that it doesn't
Correct.
linger around in your mind, but you know when to pick it up.
True, 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 true. I think stop is a good word, but I was thinking again when I was reading this from a sport. So in boxing, they say that the power of the punch depends on the power of the pause.
Mm,
So that pause is what you're talking about, right? When you take the pause, then the next momentum
yes,
is going to be far better. And the punch is going to be
yes,
more powerful. And not
absolutely.
many of us take that pause because it's almost like a relay race. It's just running and running and running towards the finish line, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
true, true, true. I
And
think the
this is
pause is.
true in all our lives, Rajiv. I mean, we're just running and running and running every day. Sometimes just taking, to put it in a very simple way, sometimes just taking that break and that time off,
Yeah,
so stopping, will take you leaps and bounds
I
further
know,
then.
I know, I know. In fact, for all of us as a humanity, this COVID 2020 has been a good stop year. It has played the role of a year of years for us in terms of
Yes,
stop, if we can put it that way, right?
yes. If I
Isn't it?
could rephrase it better, I would call it a pause.
Definitely a pause. Yeah, yeah.
Sorry, I'm not the author, but
Absolutely. Which
but
is what
that's
I
what he
said. I
really
would want to
means.
call it a
If
pause.
you interpret it, yes, absolutely.
True, true, true. Lovely. That brings me to the last
Thank you,
question
Rajiv.
of this conversation, Sheetal. With all that years of experience that you have garnered from Unilever and Schindler, if I can nichod ke bring it into a glass kind of thing, two razor sharp bullseye advice you would love to give to the young leaders who are aspiring to reach an occupy position that you are currently occupying? What are those two laser sharp advices?
I would draw it out from this particular book.
Please
Yeah.
go ahead.
One is self trust. So I would say self trust and self awareness, right? I think both these things are extremely powerful because when I look at self awareness, it allows you to introspect, it allows you to identify your weaknesses.
Hmm.
If you are going to be vulnerable to your own self, it will just help you identify how you have to grow and develop yourself. So I think self awareness is just so important. And then comes self trust, right? So once you identify those, believe in yourself. Sometimes it takes longer, sometimes you may have external barriers. And in
Right.
fact, this book so beautifully tells you that most of the times it's not external barriers, it is
Hmm.
yourself that is your enemy. So please
Hmm.
trust yourself, bring out that self too, and you can keep growing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for those bullseye inputs. With that, we come to the end of this conversation. Thank you so much for accepting the invitation and coming and beautifully articulating this powerful book of the inner game of work. This 45 minutes of conversation I thoroughly enjoyed, and I hope you had a good time as well.
I did. I loved it, Rajiv. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Thank you
so
for
much.
having me.
Absolutely a pleasure. You have a good evening, and I'll see you soon.